Hey guys, this is MC Ray, author of the Unveiled series. I am excited to see you guys on March 15th and 16th at the Atlanta SciFi and Fantasy Expo. See you guys there. So my name is MC Ray. I am from Stockbridge, Georgia, but now I currently reside in Atlanta, Georgia.
Okay. Tell us, what do you do? What kind of creative things you do?
So I write fantasy novels, typically around kind of the fantastical element, so not to be confused with sci-fi, which kind of typically comes from like sometimes post-dystopian things or things that are related to like the real world, but really fantastical world building type of thing. So if you like your Children of Blood and Bone, Witcher series, Harry Potter, you'll kind of like my series. So I've always been a writer. Like as a kid, we weren't really like allowed to watch too much. We were encouraged to read. So we'd have those competitions like in elementary school where like you'd write a book or submit, and I'd always do like the drawings and the writing things, and I'd do the competitions and go pretty far in those. And so it was something that I always kind of did. I always was very adept to like that type of thing as a hobby versus just like chilling. And of course when video games and comics started coming about or being more popularized, specifically through book fairs, that was like what I leaned into. So it was really kind of like from childhood. This specific story was birthed when I was like in college. It was my junior year, and I was just I've always, for some reason, liked elves. Mermaids too, but like elves really. And the folklore around it, specifically when like reading Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. And so I started writing this series, and I wrote the first book in like a year and a half. And then the other ones to follow. I wrote the complete series prior to like putting the first one out. And so I have this one and the second one out now currently. Ooh, that's a good question. I think I always had it in me to write in like a particular way. I think, like most authors, I think initially you think that goal is out of your reach to write. 90,000 to 120,000 words is kind of like insane. I think once I started and I did the first one, I think I realized like, wow, this is like how probably most books are made. Most people just start off writing and putting them out. And so I think initially a lot of the stuff I stuck to was safe, like poetry. Not to knock anybody that does only do those things, but I think when you write like a full novel, a full series, it's kind of like a different picking game. There's a lot more like technique to it, because you have to kind of coordinate your story throughout, make sure you're consistent outside of just the creative piece. So that was something that I thought would be more like of a task than I was up for, but once I did the first one, I was like, all right, I can do it. And so, yeah. So while in college, before that, I had always been taking like creative class. I had always had honors in AP English, but when I got to college, you realize, you're going into your major, like it's kind of like whatever you do outside of that is on your own. So of course I joined a writing group. I also took dramatic writing courses, so I was really interested in at that time learning about script writing and stuff like that. So I took a course like that. So I always tried to find a way to coordinate it to kind of like be in my schedule somehow. For whatever classes I could. So in it, I also took like an African American literature course. So there was just like a lot of space where I was just like, if I could read, if I could write, I want to get into that. But upon graduation, obviously you have to those hobbies you have to form your own. So I joined to write a writing group. I would have beta readers that I would send out like chapters to. I think that's super important. Just having people that are not necessarily, I would even say readers. I would just say people that you kind of trust or that you can develop trust with, that are open to like reading a few of your pages, every time you send them, and you vice versa, and giving their honest feedback. Like would they continue? And a lot of questions would center like not necessarily quizzing them on what they read, but just seeing how they react to your reading. If they read it and they like, you could tell like they probably weren't interested in it, you have a good idea that you might not be reaching whatever that individual's interests are, you know what I mean? Or that like you'll get the response where some people are like, oh wow, like I don't normally read this type of thing, but this is kind of interesting. And it's like, you want to kind of hear those things to see like, because people will stop reading your book after the first 3 chapters. So it's a book that you're trying to get people to like read and continue reading. And and especially in a series, you want them not only to read like the first chapters in the whole first book, but you want them to be like intrigued enough to go to the next. So I think having a writing group is also great, because that hones your craft, but beta reading or having beta readers or having a group of those individuals as well helps you kind of to like see if you're hitting your audience or your intended audience. Is people come across, I've met a lot of people from like Comic-Cons, so like that we like regularly talk to and send stuff to. And other writers, I think is some, I haven't found any official ones in the Atlanta area. That'd be something that'd be really cool. But a lot of mine have persisted in like people that are also on the same journey. And I've connected a lot to like professional writers like that like, and I've interviewed them on my own platforms to kind of like garner those things. So I have like a nice network. I would say that's probably the biggest thing that I probably could have taken from this experience, just because it's very similar to what I did in college. It was like I majored in, worked in finance, so a lot of that is networking, seeing what your next opportunity is, especially in the business world. So it kind of was easy to pivot that into like how I was going to connect, and mainly just because you don't want to make the same mistakes that other authors have done in the past, so having that connection. But I think in a writing group space, nothing official, but definitely have a great group of people that I talk to regularly. So it was always my interest. Me and my dad actually were really close. We'd go see all the fantastical movies, superhero movies, and stuff together. So that was something that we did like as father son. I wouldn't say, I think with both of my parents, especially initially as we were kids, I wouldn't say I wasn't like not close, because we were close. It was just a very parental child relationship, and I think a lot of people might have grown up in that. This space was like the one space where I saw like where me and my dad felt like peers, and felt like I'm friends with my dad, you know, versus like you know, we'd get food and go to the theater, and it's like it even got to a point like when the Hobbit movies came out that I'm like taking him and paying for our movies, and we're like, and it's just something that me and him would do. And I think like you need those moments where like where there's like that meeting where you get to see the humanity in like both individuals, and I think that was something, I think that's something that fantasy does in general. I think people see social issues, people see their trauma, people see it through the lens a lot more clearly in a fantastical space, because like in their mind it's like, this isn't real, but I can see everything that, and I can see how this relates to my life. I think people can watch or read a Harry Potter book and see like why, you know, it's bigoted to be racist, for instance. So it's like that they might not necessarily identify in their regular life. So I think fantasy in that helped me build that. I didn't have many friends, I think, that were overtly like talking about these type of things. I think everybody talks about how like now it's so pop culture to be like into anime and into like even like streamers now are like celebrities, which is a beautiful thing to see. It's a beautiful thing to see that like people are gaining traction in a space that's generally their interest in being able to connect with others around the world on those things. I think growing up, I think it was something that people I wouldn't say felt ashamed about, but just didn't talk about openly. They probably thought that people just weren't interested. And so I think, and that comes with exposure. I think if I didn't have, I wonder how anybody would be exposed to any of these things. And I think if my dad wasn't interested in this type of thing, if he didn't like superhero shows, we weren't gathering on Saturday mornings to watch, you know, WB36, to watch Batman and all these things, like I don't know necessarily how I would have just been exposed to it, versus like now where there's like all this exposure, we realize is a genuine interest. So the title of the book is called The Unveiled Series, or it's called The Unveiled. The series is called The Unveiled Series. The second one's The Unraveled. It features Alia Lightstar, who's a she-elf who, through a series of trials and tribulations, has to defend her city against a pair of roaming eyes, but everything's not as it seems. Not only does she have to defend her city against like this obviously hidden character that's on this book, but she also has to kind of disavow like a lot of the issues that present to her in her community, and so including the relationship with humans in the book. So it's really, if you like, you're like outside of just the politics of being in a city and being a she-elf, you like her action, your warrior type thing, this is kind of something that she challenged and has to deal with image, making her own path. And so that's kind of the premise of the first book. And the second book, The Unraveled, follows her journey after she becomes the protector of the city, which is like the highest rank of of the city get endowed with power and things of that sort. Her having to deal with that and the politics that come around that, defending her city, people that want to assassinate her. So it's just like a lot of that action, a lot of that stuff that we're used to in the fantastical elements books. So,
Okay.
and the characters are mainly elves and humans. So it's completely fictitious. It's the city's like kind of, I would say like probably based a little bit more in kind of what I'm trying to think of a good show that or a movie that or even like a book that kind of nods to it. I would say like Witcher-esque. Like the Witcher series is a really good example of like kind of like the time. It's like nobles, like people born into like how their lives are going to be, very case system-esque. We don't really have that as much anymore. I think across the world as much. Like we don't really have like a royal system anymore, obviously, but
Sure.
these books kind of subscribe to those descriptors. So I've always, so I have a big heart for Atlanta. I'm gonna have to start there because I feel like Atlanta gets so much slack. I think people move here and they immediately have so many things to say. So I think, and obviously this is something that we don't, I don't want to say that we don't see ever in Atlanta because we have MomoCon, we have the Atlanta Comic Convention or Atlanta Comic Con. We have a whole bunch of like Conjuration Con, shout out to the smaller conventions as well. But also like the only way we can kind of, so outside of it being like, you know, true to Atlanta, something that's like looking to bring the Atlanta community together, it's a growing con that like we need to support in order for it to continue to grow. And like I said, I think the centralized message of community was something that was like super cool. Especially when I heard about when it's first at Northlake Mall, and I thought that was really cool to have it in an area that I think people like weren't always visiting and things of that sort. So I think when I first saw it optically, I was just like, and I think there was like a little like black girl on the cover of the one, or like a cartoon black girl of one I saw, of the flyer I saw the year that one of the years that I first saw it, maybe during the pandemic. And I thought that was really, really cool that they're centralizing a black girl on the cover. I just thought like that was something that was really cool that intrigued me, and I felt like it's a cool space to be in, and just like the community that's around it. So I think in the future, obviously it's something that I want to continue to be a part of, but mainly because I think Atlanta's a growing space. Atlanta is a space that in a short period of time, a lot of different people have moved here. And I think creating spaces like this, having conventions of this sort, helps to kind of continue to build the community in the same way that we discussed earlier about like how like people don't know there's an interest until there's something that allows them to like garner it and to like showcase it. And I think having something like this is a way, and showing up for it when you see it presented like I did, like I saw it on social media. I think it's the best way to kind of gain that interest. So really, I've always stuck to kind of the books space. I hope to like eventually pivot into merchandise. I think that's something that like I have my interest in. I think especially once I get a little bit more time and energy under my belt. But like I said, I think a lot of conversation geared around just like literacy and indie books. I think that's something I'm also super passionate about, is like giving indie authors the same chance, the same credibility. I don't think it's everybody's journey to be to do the traditional publishing house. I think and I'm one of the lucky few. I would say I'm like one of the blessed few that like, you know, I put a lot of money into my book, but also got a lot of that money back. You know what I mean? Like through sales, through views, through things of that sort. And I know like that's not going to be everybody's story. And also, like I said, like I have outside of the creative space a way to, you know, sponsor kind of that idea. And I know that's not everybody's thing, and I'm not saying that should be the deciding factor, but I do think that that a lot of people sell the rights to their books for the sake of like wanting that shoot at the one opportunity to be the next J.K. Rowling, be the next J.R.R. Tolkien, or the next Tomi Adeyemi, and they don't always get what they deserve because like they have to just kind of do what they have to do for that financial piece, maybe, or not even for that financial piece. Maybe they just like thought that like this was what the best decision would be for them. And I think having the autonomy to be like, hey, I'm an indie author and I deserve space. I don't need credibility from anybody else in order to establish that this book is a good book. I've went out and got my own reviews. I've encouraged people to review. I've posted enough about it. And that's another thing too, is like now social media, now conventions, now like ASFE, present you the space and opportunity to kind of get your own voice and word out there. And I think I've realized enough in life now at this point. I mean, it hasn't been super long, but it's been long enough that like all it takes is one shot, and you can get everything you've ever wanted. And so I think patience and diligence is something that I'm willing to continue to keep as rights of virtue. And I think that's something that I'll always bring with me to any convention I go to. I typically like have questions, or I have like a candish with like a question to ask. So like candy, I think always gets people over. I try to keep like I said, I try to use a lot of the lessons I've learned in like the business space. Especially as like I'm wrapping up my MBA, I think there's like a lot more ideas of things that I haven't always considered, but like I do try to hit my P's and Q's on every aspect. But mainly, like I said, I think the most engaging, most time when like that return has happened is when people have is me being present and me like just being honest about my experience and showing them how much I love my series. So you can find the books on Amazon, but also you can go directly to my site. It's jovenelray.com. That's jovenelray.com. And you can also follow me on social media at jovenelray on Instagram and Twitter. That's jovenelray. And the book has its own social media as well called Unveiled Series, and that is only on Instagram.